I missed class to work, Judge, the kid snapped like he was bored. Then he leaned in, loud enough for everybody to hear, and said, "So don't act like you saved my life. You're just a guy in a robe." For 10 seconds, nobody in my courtroom moved. Not the clerk, not the bailiff, not the woman sitting in the front row with a brace on her wrist, not even the loud teenagers in the back who came in just to watch. I felt my face go still. I have heard people lie. I have heard people cry. I have heard people get angry. But this was different. This was a kid talking like respect was something you only give if someone can buy it. Providence Municipal Court can be small, the benches can creak, the walls can look plain, but this room holds real stories, real pain, real choices, and I'm the judge sitting in that chair. My name is Judge Frank Carpio. This is a fully made-up case I'm telling you as I lived it on my bench. Every name and detail is created for this story, but the lesson is real, because the same kind of pride shows up everywhere. That morning, the case in front of me looked simple on paper. A traffic case, a student, a missed class, a story about work. But the secret he was hiding, it was not what anybody expected. And it started with the bailiff calling a case number that sounded like any other. Case 2026 TR 41872. Before I continue, if you believe justice should be equal for everyone, you'll want to see what happens next. The bailiff stood tall near the rail. His voice carried the way it always does in my court. Case 2026 TR 410872, City of Providence versus Miles Renshaw. A young man walked up to the table like he owned the floor. He was 18 years old, maybe 19. He had hair cut sharp on the sides. The top was brushed back like he had time to stare in a mirror. He wore a bright white hoodie with big black letters across the chest. The kind of hoodie that costs more than a family's grocery bill. His sneakers were clean and thick, like he had never stepped in a puddle once in his life. On his wrist was a silver watch that flashed when the lights hit it. His face had this half smile. Not happy, not kind. More like a challenge, like he was saying, "Go ahead, try me." But when I looked closer, I saw things that didn't match the picture. His eyes were tired. Not, "I stayed up playing games tired." More like, "I didn't sleep much at all, tired." His backpack strap was frayed like it had been carried too long, and his hands had little cuts, like from rough work. That didn't fit the shiny watch. I kept my voice calm. I always do. "Good morning, Mr. Renshaw, is that you?" He nodded like it was a favor. "Yeah, that's me." "Are you here with a lawyer?" He laughed, short and sharp. "For a ticket?" "No." I glanced at the file. It wasn't just one ticket, it was several. It also involved property damage and leaving the scene. That means someone got hurt or something got hit, and the driver did not stay. In my court, that matters. I looked to the other side. "Ma'am, would you step forward for me, please?" A woman stood up slowly from the first row. She moved like every step cost her. She was in her 50s. Her hair was pulled back, simple, no fancy makeup, no fancy bag. Her jacket was worn at the elbows. One wrist was wrapped in a tan brace. Her fingers looked stiff. She held a folder close to her chest, like it was the only thing keeping her steady. "My name is Lila Moreno," she said. Her voice shook, but she kept going. "I'm a crossing guard at Green Street School, and I work in the lunchroom too. I do both jobs." I nodded. "Thank you for being here, Ms. Moreno." She swallowed. "I didn't want to come. I don't like court, but I had to." I asked, "Why did you feel you had to?" She opened her folder and pulled out papers that were bent at the corners. "Because my car got hit, and I missed work, and my wrist. It's not right yet." Her eyes got wet, but she blinked hard. She didn't want to cry in front of everyone, not in front of this kid. "I take care of my mom," she added softly. "She's sick. I can't just lose money." I glanced at Miles again. He was staring at his own nails like this was a boring class. I said, "Mr. Renshaw, you understand Ms. Moreno is here because she says your car hit her car and you left." He rolled his eyes. "I didn't hit anybody." Ms. Moreno's shoulders dropped a little, like she expected that. I said, "We're going to go step by step. In Providence Municipal Court, I see people from every corner of the city. I see nurses, students, roofers, people who take the bus, people who drive new cars with no scratches. But in my courtroom, everyone stands in the same spot. Everyone answers the same questions." I leaned forward. "Ms. Moreno, tell me what happened. Keep it simple." She took a breath. "I was on Green Street," she said. "It was morning. Kids were coming. I had my stop sign, the little hand sign. I stepped out because the cars stopped. Then a car came fast in the bus lane." She looked at Miles, then away. "It came too close. It clipped my mirror, and it clipped my elbow when I tried to pull back. I fell. My wrist went under me." She lifted the braced wrist a little. "The car didn't stop. The gallery made a low sound. Not loud, just that quiet oh people make when they feel something unfair." Miles snorted. "She's acting like I ran over her. It was a tight street." That was the first disrespect moment, and it landed hard in the room. Ms. Moreno's face flushed, her mouth opened, then closed. She looked down at her papers like she needed them to keep from shaking. I kept my voice level, but I made it clear. "Mr. Renshaw, you will not speak about her like that in my courtroom." He lifted his eyebrows. "I'm just saying," I said, "and I'm just warning. Speak with respect." He leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms. I could feel the courtroom watching me, like people do. They want to know if the judge will get pulled into the anger. I never let that happen. If I lose my calm, I lose the power to bring anyone else back to calm. So I turned to the clerk. "Let's review the charges." The clerk read them out in a clear voice. Improper use of bus lane, speeding in a school zone, leaving the scene of property damage, failure to yield to a pedestrian. Miles clicked his tongue like he was annoyed with the words. I asked him, "How do you plead? Not responsible, meaning you say you did not do it? Or responsible, meaning you admit it?" He didn't even look at me. "Not responsible." "All right," I said. "Then we look at the facts." Ms. Moreno shifted her folder in her hands. She looked like she wanted to be anywhere else. I asked her, "Do you have proof of your medical visit?" She handed the clerk a paper. "My doctor note," she said. "And the bill." I nodded. "Thank you." Then I looked at Miles. "Mr. Renshaw, do you have anything you want to tell me before I look at the evidence?" He shrugged. "Yeah, I got class. I missed it already because I had to come here. And I missed class that day too because I had to work. So can we just wrap this up?" His words had a sharp edge, like he was blaming me for his choices. I said, "We will take the time we need. A school zone is not a place to rush." He laughed again. People rush everywhere. That's when I felt the second wave of disrespect, smaller but still clear, not just toward me, toward the whole idea that rules matter. I leaned forward. "Mr. Renshaw, you said you missed class to work." "Yeah," he said, "I work. Some of us do." He said it like a jab at the whole room, like everybody else was lazy. Ms. Moreno's eyes lifted for a second, like she wanted to speak, but she didn't. I said, "What kind of work?" Miles' jaw tightened. "A job, a real job, not like holding a little sign." Ms. Moreno flinched like he slapped her with words. The gallery made another sound. Somebody whispered, "Wow." I felt heat in my chest, not rage, not yet, more like a warning light. I said, slow and clear, "Ms. Moreno's job keeps children alive. In this room we respect that." Miles smirked, but he didn't answer. I turned to the prosecutor's table. In this story, the city had a young prosecutor named Mr. Devlin. He stood up with a file in his hands. "Your Honor," he said, "the city has evidence number 1. I said, "Go ahead." He held up a printed photo and a small thumb drive. Evidence 1 is a set of still images from a street camera near Green Street School. It shows the defendant's vehicle in the bus lane at 8:07 a.m., moving faster than surrounding cars, passing stopped traffic, and making contact with Ms. Moreno's vehicle. I watched Miles's face. For the first time, the smirk slipped a little, just a little. I said, "Mr. Renshaw, step closer and look at these images." He stood up slow, like he was doing me a favor. He walked up and leaned over the screen. The first image showed a black sedan, the kind of car that looks like money, dark-tinted windows, clean shine. The second image showed the same car near the crosswalk in the bus lane, right where it shouldn't be. The third image showed the edge of the car close to Ms. Moreno's small car, a dusty blue hatchback with a cracked tail light. And in the fourth image, you could see Ms. Moreno's arm pulled back and her body twisting away. The camera didn't catch the exact moment of skin on metal, but it caught the story. Fast car, school zone, crosswalk, a person pulling back, and then the car moving on. I asked Miles, "Is this your vehicle?" He stared at it. "It's a car," I said. "Is it yours?" He clenched his jaw. "A lot of cars look like that," Mr. Devlin said. "Your Honor, the plate is visible in one image." He zoomed in. The plate was not perfect, but the last three numbers matched the citation. Miles's eyes darted. I said, "Mr. Renshaw, this is not a guessing game." He threw his hands up. "Fine, it's my car, but that doesn't mean I hit her. She could have moved wrong. She said herself it was tight." I asked, "Why didn't you stop?" His answer came too fast. "Because I didn't feel anything," Ms. Moreno whispered. "He didn't even look." Her words were small, but they cut. I looked at Miles. In a school zone, you don't wait to feel something. You stop because you might have hurt someone. You stop because it is the right thing. He leaned forward. "Look, I had to get to work. I already told you. I'm not trying to be rude, but this is wasting my day." That was the moment I knew we were heading into a fight, not with fists, but with pride. And pride can be louder than truth. I took a breath and kept my tone even. "Mr. Renshaw, I'm going to ask you again. What job did you miss class for?" He looked around the room like he was checking who was listening. Then he said, "Construction." The word sounded stiff, like it didn't fit his mouth. I studied him. Those small cuts on his hands. The tired eyes. It could be true, but his clothes screamed something else. I said, "Where do you work?" He snapped, "It doesn't matter." I said, "It matters if you are using it as your reason." He scoffed. "My boss doesn't want his name dragged into court." I said, "No one is dragging anything. We are looking for facts." Miles leaned back again, and he said the next line like he wanted to show off. "My mom knows people downtown. This is a joke ticket. It's going to get tossed. So can we stop acting like this is some big lesson?" That was the authority challenge, the influence attempt, the I know people move, and I've seen that move before. I kept my eyes on him. "Mr. Renshaw, do you think knowing people changes what happened on Green Street?" He smiled. "It changes what happens to me." The gallery shifted. Somebody let out a short laugh like they couldn't believe it. Ms. Moreno's chin trembled. I felt my voice drop, calm but firm. "Let me explain something simple. In my courtroom, your last name is not a shield. Your connections are not a pass. The facts are the facts." Miles's smile faded. Mr. Devlin cleared his throat. "Your Honor, the city has evidence number 2. I said, "Bring it." He held up a packet of papers. "See, evidence 2 is a set of messages from the defendant's phone, obtained with consent after the citation was issued." Miles's head snapped up. "What? I never consented." Mr. Devlin said, "Your Honor, the defendant signed a release form at the station when he requested the footage. The form included access to contact information tied to the report." Miles looked down fast, like he remembered something he didn't want to remember. I said, "Mr. Renshaw, you did sign forms that day?" He mumbled, "They said it was routine." I nodded. "Routine means standard. It means normal. And you still have to read what you sign." Mr. Devlin turned to one page and read out a line. At 8:12 a.m., 5 minutes after the incident, the defendant texted a contact saved as Jack's Wrap Shop and wrote, "Need a fast plate swap. Today, cash." The room got quiet again. Ms. Moreno's eyes widened. Miles' face went red. I asked, "Mr. Renshaw, what does plate swap mean?" He barked out a laugh. "It means nothing. It's a joke." Mr. Devlin kept going. At 8:14 a.m., the same contact replied, Not touching plates. Too hot. The defendant responded, then cover the dent. I'll pay double. Now the air in the room felt heavy. I looked at Miles and said, if you didn't hit anyone, why were you trying to cover a dent right after? He leaned forward, angry. Because people accuse you of stuff. Because I'm tired of getting blamed. Because that lady, he pointed toward Ms. Moreno. She saw a nice car and decided it was payday. That was the moment he crossed a line and went after the victim with cruelty. Ms. Moreno's eyes filled. She didn't wipe them. She just stood there, holding her folder like it was the only thing keeping her from falling apart. I felt my jaw tighten. I said, Mr. Renshaw, you will not accuse her of lying to get money without proof. That is not how we treat people here. He sneered. Why are you defending her so hard? I looked him straight in the face. Because she is a person. Because she is standing in front of you with a brace on her wrist. Because she gets up in the cold morning to stop cars so kids can live to see their next birthday. That's why. Before I take you to the next piece of evidence, I want you to do something for me. If you're sitting there thinking, this kid is about to learn a hard lesson, hit the like button right now. It tells me you're still with me, and what happens next is even harder to watch. Miles shook his head like I was the problem. Mr. Devlin said, Your Honor, there is also a call log. He pointed to a timestamp. At 8:16 a.m., the defendant called a number listed to a private towing service. The same service later moved his vehicle from a lot near the school at 8:40 a.m. Ms. Moreno whispered, He hit it. Miles snapped, Shut up. The bailiff took one step forward. Not fast. Just enough to remind the room that the court has order. I raised a hand slightly, and the bailiff stopped. I said, Mr. Renshaw, you will not tell a witness to shut up. Miles' chest rose and fell. He looked like a kettle about to whistle. Man, he muttered, this is unreal. I asked, Tell me the truth. Were you trying to hide your vehicle that morning? He lifted his chin. I was trying to protect myself, he said, because people like her will ruin you for nothing. I glanced at Ms. Moreno. Her cheeks were wet now. She kept her eyes down. I felt my heart pull in two directions, like it often does. One direction is anger at disrespect. The other direction is curiosity about why a kid this young would talk like he's already at war with the world. I said, Mr. Renshaw, you told me you missed class to work. You also told me you didn't feel anything. But you texted someone about covering a dent and swapping plates minutes later. That doesn't line up. He slammed his palm on the table. The sound cracked across the room. Because you don't get it, he yelled. I don't have time for your little speeches. The gallery gasped. The clerk froze with her pen in the air. The bailiff moved again, closer this time, and I sat very still, because when a person tries to take control of my courtroom with noise, I do the opposite. I lower my voice. I slow down. I make them face the silence they're trying to outrun. I said, Mr. Renshaw, sit down. He stood there for a second, breathing hard. Then he dropped into the chair like it was an insult to him. I looked at Mr. Devlin. Do we have more? Mr. Devlin nodded. Yes, Your Honor. Evidence number 3 is a video. Miles's eyes flicked up fast. A video from where? He asked. Mr. Devlin said, From a school bus. Miles laughed once, but it sounded forced. A school bus doesn't have a camera. Mr. Devlin replied, This one does. Many do now. It's for safety. Miles' smile vanished. I could feel the whole room lean forward, like a wave pulling toward shore. And right then, I noticed something else. Miles' foot was tapping fast under the table. Not a rich kid bored tap, a scared tap, a please don't show that tap. I asked, Mr. Renshaw, before we play the video, I want to ask you one last time, is there anything you are not telling me? He swallowed. Then he said low, I told you what you need to know. I stared at him for a long beat, because I could sense there was a secret in his chest like a locked box, and he was holding the key so tight it was cutting into his hand. I said, All right, and I nodded to the clerk. Play the video. Wait until you hear what that bus camera showed. But before I take you there, share this story with someone who believes school zones should be safe. What's about to come out in my courtroom made even my toughest officers blink. The screen lit up, the video loaded, and the first frame froze on a black sedan in the bus lane, flying past stopped cars like the rules were for somebody else. And then the audio kicked in. A child's voice, small and clear, said, "Why is that car going so fast?" And I knew in my gut that this case was about to change. Not just for Ms. Moreno, not just for Miles, for everybody watching. The first frame on the screen looked like any school morning. Gray sky, wet street, a line of cars, a yellow bus stopped with its red lights flashing. Kids inside, faces pressed near the glass like fish in a tank, curious and loud. Then the audio played again. A child's voice, small and clear, said, "Why is that car going so fast?" In my courtroom, the sound came out of a simple speaker on the clerk's desk, but it filled the whole room. It was the kind of voice you can't ignore, because it belongs to someone who still trusts adults to keep them safe. On the screen, the black sedan slid into view on the left side. It was in the bus lane, cutting past stopped traffic. It moved like a knife through paper. The bus camera shook for a second, like the bus driver hit the brake. Another kid yelled, "Whoa!" Then a deeper voice came through, calm but tight. The bus driver, "Sit back, everybody sit back." I saw the exact moment the sedan reached the crosswalk. Ms. Moreno was there, holding her stop sign out. Her feet were planted, her head turned toward the bus like she was checking the kids. Then she turned toward the sedan, and her body jerked back. The sedan's side mirror clipped her car mirror with a snap. You could hear it, even through the bus camera, even through the court speaker. The sound cut sharp. Ms. Moreno's arm shot up. Her elbow hit the car. She stumbled. Her wrist went under her when she fell. The bus driver's voice rose, "Hey, stop, stop!" On the screen, the sedan did not stop. It kept going. A kid cried out, "That lady fell!" Another kid said, "Is she okay?" Then the bus driver said something that made my stomach drop. "That's the crossing guard. Somebody call it in. Now." The video kept playing. The sedan's rear end bounced slightly as it hit a pothole. For 1 second, the camera caught a clearer view through the passenger window. And I saw Miles's face. Not perfect, not like a movie close-up, but clear enough. His head was tilted down. His hand held a phone up near his mouth. His lips were moving. The camera picked up the sound of him too, like his window was cracked open, like the microphone on the bus was hungry for the truth. Miles' voice came through, thin and rushed. "I'm almost there. I'm almost there." The courtroom did something strange. It got so quiet I could hear the soft hum of the lights above me. Ms. Moreno lifted a shaking hand to her mouth. Miles' eyes went wide. His foot stopped tapping. On the video, Miles's voice continued. He wasn't talking to the bus. He wasn't talking to Ms. Moreno. He was talking to someone on the phone. A different voice crackled back from the speaker, harsh and low. You could tell it was on speakerphone. "Not almost, now." Miles's voice snapped. "I said I'm coming." The other voice replied, "Don't come empty." Miles said, I got it. I'm working, all right?" The sedan turned the corner and disappeared. The bus driver's voice took over again. "Everybody stay seated. I'm calling dispatch." The video ended with the bus driver stepping off the bus, moving fast toward Ms. Moreno, and the kids inside looking scared and confused. The screen went black. For a moment, nobody in my court breathed. Then the gallery reacted in pieces. One woman whispered, "Oh my God." A man shook his head slowly like he couldn't believe a person would keep driving. Someone in the back muttered, "That's crazy." The sound spread like wind in grass. Ms. Moreno made a small noise in her throat. Not a cry, more like a hurt that finally got proof. Miles stood up. "No," he blurted out. No, that's not what it looks like." I held up a hand. "Mr. Renshaw, sit." He didn't sit. He pointed at the screen like he could argue with the video. "That audio is fake," he said. "People can do that now. They can make voices. I saw it online. You can make anybody say anything." He looked around like he wanted someone to jump in and rescue him. Mr. Devlin stayed steady. "Your Honor, the bus company provided the original file. It has a timestamp and a digital signature." Miles snapped, "Digital what?" I said, A digital signature is like a stamp. It helps show the file has not been changed. He shook his head hard. I don't care what you call it. I didn't hit her. I leaned forward. Mr. Renshaw, the video shows your car in the bus lane. The audio has your voice. The crossing guard fell. You kept going. That is what happened. He turned toward Ms. Moreno. His eyes were bright with anger. You stepped out too far, he said. You think you own the street because you got a sign. Ms. Moreno flinched again. Her shoulders curled in like she wanted to disappear. The bailiff shifted his weight. He didn't like the way Miles was aiming his anger at her. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Mr. Renshaw, I said, you're blaming the person who was doing her job. Miles laughed, but it sounded more like panic than humor. She's fine, he said. Look at her. She's standing. Ms. Moreno lifted her braced wrist slightly. I can't open jars. I can't lift trays at work. My mom needs help getting out of bed. You don't know what fine is. Her voice surprised even her. It came out stronger than she meant, because it was the truth. Miles's face twisted. I missed class to work, he repeated, louder now, like volume would turn the lie into armor. I'm not out here playing games, I asked. Then why did you not stop? He stared at me, his mouth opened, closed, then opened again. I didn't have a choice, he said. That line hung in the air. I said, everyone has a choice. He shook his head fast. Not everyone. The gallery started to murmur. People could feel the edge of something deeper under his anger, but nobody knew what it was yet. Mr. Devlin said, Your Honor, I would like to call the bus driver as a witness. I nodded. Bring them forward. A man in a blue uniform stood from the second row. He looked like someone who had been up since dawn. His name for this case was Calvin Pike. He walked to the stand with slow care, like he didn't want to be the center of attention. He raised his right hand and took the oath. I asked, Mr. Pike, you drive that bus? Yes, Your Honor, he said. Road 11, Green Street School. I said, Do you recognize the defendant? He turned and looked at Miles. Yes, he said, I do. Miles's shoulders stiffened. Mr. Pike continued, I've seen him around the school, not on my bus, but around. I know his face. Miles snapped, So what? Everybody knows my face. I gave him a look that said, Not another word. Mr. Pike swallowed. I saw that car come through the bus lane. It was flying. I hit the brake because it scared me. My kids inside were screaming. Then I saw Ms. Moreno fall. He paused. His jaw tightened. I got off the bus. I ran to her. She was holding her wrist. She was shaking. I asked her if she could breathe. I asked if her head hit the ground. She kept saying, The kids. That's the kind of person she is. Ms. Moreno wiped her cheek with the back of her hand. Mr. Pike looked at me. The car didn't even slow down, Judge. Miles spoke again, low and sharp. You don't know why. Mr. Pike glanced at him, then back to me. I don't, but I know what I saw. I nodded. Thank you, Mr. Pike. You may step down. As Mr. Pike walked away, I watched Miles. His chest was rising and falling again, like the truth was closing in and he wanted to shove it back. I said, Mr. Renshaw, I'm going to ask you something simple. When you heard the bus driver shout, Stop, on the video, what did you do? He stared at the table. I kept going, he said. I said, That's leaving the scene. He jerked his head up. I told you I didn't have a choice. I asked, What forced you? His eyes moved to the gallery, then to the bailiff, then to Ms. Moreno, then back to me. He swallowed hard. He said, I had to get to work. I said, Where? He hesitated. Then he barked out, A site. I said, Which site? He snapped, I'm not putting it on record. I said, You want me to believe you missed class to work, but you won't tell me where you work. He leaned forward, voice rising. Because you'll call them, you'll mess it up. I said, Mr. Renshaw, the only person messing this up is you. He slapped his hand on his chest once, like he was trying to shake his own heart into place. You don't get it, he said again. You don't. I looked at him and kept my voice steady. Help me get it, I said. Tell the truth. He stared for a long time. His mouth tightened. His eyes went glossy for half a second, then hardened again like he hated himself for almost showing feeling. And then he did what many scared people do. He attacked. He leaned back and scoffed. "Look at this," he said loud enough for the whole room. "We got a crossing guard playing hero, a bus driver playing hero, and a judge playing hero." The gallery went stiff. Ms. Moreno's face drained of color. The bailiff took a step closer. I didn't move, I just watched him. Because I knew this kid was standing on a cliff, and he was either going to climb down with truth or jump with pride. I said, "Mr. Renshaw, you've been warned about respect." He shrugged like it was nothing. "Respect doesn't pay rent." That line hit the room like a rock. Ms. Moreno whispered, almost to herself, "Neither does pain." I turned to Mr. Devlin. "Do we have anything that shows his school schedule or his claim about class?" Mr. Devlin nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. The city has a letter from the school attendance office." He held up a one-page document. Simple. Official. Green Street High School confirms the defendant was marked absent on the date of the incident and also absent the day before. Miles's eyes flicked to it. I asked, "Mr. Renshaw, you've missed more than one day." He snapped, "So what? Kids miss days." I said, "Not like this. Not with a school zone crash on the same morning." He leaned in, voice dripping with anger. "I'm not a criminal. I'm a student." I said, "Then act like one. Learn." He laughed again, but it cracked. "You want me to learn?" he said. "Here's what I learned. Nobody cares unless you got money." The gallery started to talk over him now like they couldn't hold it in. A woman in the second row said, "That's not true." A man said, "You had a fancy car." Miles swung his head. "It's not even—" He stopped himself. "I caught that." "Not even what?" I asked. He shook his head. "Forget it." I said, "Mr. Renshaw, you just cut yourself off. Why?" He clenched his jaw so tight I could see the muscle jump. Mr. Devlin said, "Your Honor, I also have photos from the lot where the vehicle was towed. The rear passenger door has fresh blue paint transfer, consistent with Ms. Moreno's vehicle. There is also a dent near the wheel well." Miles's eyes shut for a second. I said, "So there was contact." He snapped, "I said it was tight." I asked, "Then why did you text someone to cover the dent?" His hands opened and closed like he didn't know what to do with them. "Because," he started. He stopped. Then he exploded, like a person ripping off a bandage with dirt under it. "Because if that car gets taken, we're done," he shouted. The room froze again. I felt my spine go straight. I said quietly, "We're done?" Miles' face changed. His anger slipped, and something raw showed for a second. Then his pride tried to cover it back up. He pointed at Ms. Moreno like it was her fault the truth came out. "You want the truth?" he said. "Fine. You want to know why I didn't stop? Because stopping means paperwork. Stopping means cops. Stopping means they tow the car." He swallowed hard, then said it. "And if they tow the car, my little sister sleeps outside." The words didn't sound like a threat. They sounded like a fact, like something he had said to himself 100 nights. The gallery went silent, but it was a different silence now. It wasn't shock at his rudeness. It was shock at what was underneath. Ms. Moreno blinked. Her mouth opened slightly. I felt my own chest tighten. I asked, "Mr. Renshaw, what did you just say?" His eyes flashed. He looked like he hated himself for letting it out. "I said what I said," he snapped. "Happy now?" I took a slow breath. "Before I go 1 inch further, if you're feeling that twist in your stomach like I felt it in mine, hit subscribe. I'm telling you, this case is about to turn in a way you won't forget, and you'll want to hear how I handle what he just admitted." I said, "You're telling me your little sister sleeps outside if the car is towed." Miles looked away. His voice dropped. "Sometimes in the car," he said. "Sometimes not." The room didn't move. Even the bailiff stayed still, like he didn't want to break the moment. Ms. Moreno whispered, "A child?" Miles snapped his head toward her. Don't act like you care now." I said, Mr. Renshaw, enough. He swung back to me. You don't get it, he said, and then he laughed like it was a joke. I mean, you do, but you don't get it. I said, then explain it. He pressed his lips together. His eyes looked wet again, but he blinked hard, angry at the water. My mom's gone, he said. The gallery let out a soft sound. He rushed his words like he didn't want to taste them. She didn't die. She just left. She dipped. She's in Florida with some guy. My dad's not around. He's locked up. I got my sister. That's it. I didn't speak. I let him fill the space. He kept going, voice louder now, like loud was safer than sad. And before you ask, no, we don't got some nice apartment. We got a car. That's what we got. And I'm still in school because I'm trying. I'm trying. He looked at me with a hard stare. So yeah, I missed class to work. I work when I can. I take jobs when I can. Cash jobs. Because the minute you put your name on paperwork, people start asking questions. And then they take her. He jabbed a finger toward the floor, like he could stab the word into the tiles. They take her. Ms. Moreno's eyes filled again, but her face changed. The anger softened into something else, not excuse, not forgiveness, just human. I said, How old is your sister? Miles's voice cracked. 8, he said. Her name's Nia. I paused. Then I asked the question I had to ask. Is she safe right now? Miles swallowed. She's at school. I nodded slowly. All right. Mr. Devlin shifted, like he didn't know what to do with the new truth. He had come in with a clean case, a bad driver, a school zone, a leaving the scene. Now there was a child in the middle of it. I said, Mr. Renshaw, you are telling me this now, but you were very disrespectful before. He snapped, because when you're scared you don't act polite. You think I got time to say yes sir and no sir while my life is falling apart? I said, fear explains behavior. It does not erase harm. He clenched his fists. Ms. Moreno spoke softly, almost like she was talking to herself. I didn't want to come here, she said. I just wanted you to stop and say sorry. I wanted you to see me. Miles's eyes darted to her. For a second, something in his face softened. Then it hardened again, like he didn't trust softness. You want sorry? He said. Sorry don't fix anything. I leaned forward. A lot of things start with sorry. He shook his head and then, like a match hitting a strip, he lit up again. And you want to know something else? He said, loud, bitter, and sharp. That fancy car everyone keeps talking about? He slapped the table. It's the only roof I got. The gallery gasped. He looked around the room like he wanted to burn every stare off his skin. You think I wear this hoodie because I'm rich? He yelled. It's from a resale bin. It's the cleanest thing I got. You think that watch is real? He pulled it off and threw it on the table. It's fake. It's a fake. His breathing turned ragged. And you know why I tried to swap plates and cover the dent? He leaned toward me, eyes wide. Because I'm tired of being one toe away from losing my sister, his voice echoed. Then he said it, the line that landed like a hammer, the nuclear quote, if I have to choose between her wrist and my sister's bed, I choose my sister every time. Every time. 10 seconds of silence, no whispers, no shifting, no coughing. Even my clerk stopped moving her pen. I felt my own face change, not anger, not softness, something heavier. The kind of weight you feel when a person says out loud the ugly choice they've been making in the dark. Then the gallery erupted, not in cheers, in shock. A woman said, "Oh my God." A man said, "Did he just say that?" Someone else snapped, "That's still wrong." Ms. Moreno stood there, crying openly now. "I'm not your enemy," she said, voice shaking. "I'm not your enemy." Miles' eyes flicked to her, and for a second he looked like he might crumble. Then his pride shoved him back upright. He turned to me, chin raised, like he wanted to win. "So don't act like you saved my life," he said, that same sharp tone from before. "You're just a guy in a robe." And that was the moment the whole court went quiet again, but this time it wasn't just shock, it was the turning point, because now I knew two things were true at the same time. He had a scared little girl depending on him, and he still chose to hurt someone and run. I sat back in my chair and I let the silence hold him there. I didn't rush to punish. I didn't rush to comfort. I just looked at Miles Renshaw and thought, this kid is holding a storm inside him and he's been throwing lightning at everyone else. I spoke at last, slow and clear. Miles, you just told this courtroom you would do it again. He stared at me, breathing hard. I said, and now you're going to listen to me. Curiosity is pulling you right now. I can feel it. Before I tell you what I said next, tap that like button if you believe two things can be true. A person can be hurting and still be responsible. Because what I'm about to do in my courtroom is not what Miles expected. I looked toward the bailiff. Close the side door, I said. The bailiff moved, calm and firm. The click of the door latch sounded louder than it should have. Miles's eyes darted. Why are you closing doors? I said. Because this is a serious moment and I'm going to keep order. He scoffed, but it sounded smaller now. I turned to Mr. Devlin. Is there any report about the child he mentioned? I asked. Mr. Devlin hesitated. No, Your Honor. This is the first time we are hearing it. I nodded. All right. Then I turned back to Miles. Miles, I said, I'm going to ask you hard questions, and I'm going to need real answers, not attitude. He opened his mouth to argue. I raised my hand slightly, not loud, not dramatic, just enough. And he stopped, because the room had changed. The video changed it. His own words changed it. Ms. Moreno's tears changed it. I looked at him and said, You are not a monster, Miles, but you are not the only person suffering. You made Ms. Moreno suffer too. His jaw tightened. I said, And you did it in a school zone. He muttered, I know. I leaned forward. Miles, I said, why didn't you stop and call for help? He stared at the table. Then he whispered, almost too low to hear, because I was scared they'd ask where we live. And when he said that, I felt the second shock hit me. Not because it was a new excuse, because it was a new kind of fear, the fear of being seen, the fear of being found out, the fear of losing the one person you love because you asked for help the wrong way. I sat there, and I knew the next words out of my mouth would shape what happened to him for years. And I also knew Ms. Moreno deserved real justice, not just a sad story. I took a slow breath, and then I began to speak. I looked at Miles, and I spoke like a father who loves you enough to tell you the truth. Miles Renshaw, I said, you are standing in Providence Municipal Court, and you are not the only person hurting. You can be scared and still be wrong. You can be tired and still be responsible. He stared at me like he wanted to fight my words. I continued, you called me a guy in a robe. You said respect doesn't pay rent. You told this room you would pick your sister's bed over Ms. Moreno's wrist every time. I let that sit. Do you hear what you did with those words? I asked. He shrugged, but it looked weak now. I said the truth. I nodded once. You said a truth about your fear, but you also said a lie about the value of other people. He frowned. What does that even mean? I said, it means you acted like Ms. Moreno is less than you, like her pain is a small thing, like her job is a joke, like the court is a stage for you to perform on. I pointed gently, not at Ms. Moreno, but at the brace on her wrist. That brace is not a story, I said. It is her life. She cooks for kids. She helps her mother stand up. She has bills. Her wrist is how she works. You took that from her for weeks. Miles's eyes dropped. I asked him, Miles, when you saw her fall, what did you feel? He swallowed. Nothing. I told you. I didn't feel the car. I shook my head. I didn't ask what the car felt. I asked what you felt. He went quiet. I waited. Sometimes the best tool a judge has is silence. Silence is like a mirror. It makes people see themselves. Finally, Miles said, very low, I felt like my stomach fell. I nodded. That's your conscience. Conscience is a big word. It means the voice inside you that tells you right from wrong. He looked up, angry again, but smaller. So what? I'm supposed to ruin my sister's life to do the right thing? I leaned forward. Miles, I said, I am not asking you to ruin your sister. I am asking you to stop ruining other people. He opened his mouth. I held up my hand. Let me finish. You are trying to carry your sister on your back. I respect love like that, but love without rules becomes danger. I looked around the room. A school zone is not a place for danger. Then I looked back at him. Miles Renshaw, I said again, do you know what could have happened? He stared. I answered my own question. If Ms. Moreno had fallen 1 foot closer, your car could have hit her head. If she had passed out in the street, another car could have rolled over her. If a child had stepped off that curb, we would not be talking about a brace. We would be talking about a funeral. The gallery went still. Ms. Moreno pressed her lips together and nodded once, like she had replayed that fear in her own mind. Miles' face tightened. I said, you think you are the only person 1 step away from losing everything. Ms. Moreno is 1 missed paycheck away from losing everything, too. He whispered, you don't know that. Ms. Moreno spoke, soft but firm. Yes, he does, because that's how it is. I looked at her. Ms. Moreno, thank you. Then I turned back to Miles. Miles, I said, I believe you when you say you're scared, but I also believe the evidence, the street camera, the texts, the tow call, the bus video. They all point in one direction. I paused. You did it, I said. You hit her car. You caused her fall. You left. Miles' eyes flashed. I didn't mean to hurt her. I nodded. I believe you, but intent is what you meant. Impact is what you did. Impact is what she feels every morning when she tries to twist her wrist. I leaned back. And now we deal with both, I said. Before I tell you what I decided, I need you with me. If you believe a court should have both a backbone and a heart, drop a like right now. I'm going to do something that helps Ms. Moreno and also protects that little girl Miles talked about. I turned to Miles. Miles Renshaw, you want the court to rush. You want the court to look away. You want the court to pretend this is just a ticket, but Ms. Moreno is not just a person. I pointed to the gallery. The kids on that bus are not just kids. This city is made of people who deserve to cross a street safely. Miles rubbed his forehead. I asked him, where is your sister living? He froze. I said, you brought her into this courtroom. I will not ignore her. Answer me. His voice shook. In the car, I asked. Is she sleeping in that car at night? He clenched his jaw. Sometimes. I nodded slowly. I turned to the bailiff. Call our court social worker. The bailiff looked surprised. Right now, Judge? Yes, I said. Right now. Miles snapped. No, don't call anybody. I looked at him, calm. Miles, I said, you don't get to demand silence when a child might not be safe. You chose to hide. You chose to run. Today you will choose help. He shook his head hard like a cornered animal. I said, this is not to punish your sister. This is to protect her. Ms. Moreno whispered, please. Miles's shoulders sagged. A few minutes later, our court social worker, Ms. Renee Halverson, stepped in. She was kind, but she was not soft in a way that breaks. She carried a small notebook and a calm face. I explained, short and simple, that a child named Nia might be sleeping in a car. Ms. Halverson nodded. Judge, we can speak with him after the hearing. Quietly. Miles whispered, I don't want her taken. Ms. Halverson said, nobody wants to punish a child. We want to make sure she has a warm bed. I watched Miles' eyes flicker. Hope, fear, pride. I said, Miles, you are not being arrested for being poor. You are being held responsible for what you did on that street. Then I looked him in the eye. And you are being asked to accept help because you are not supposed to raise a child alone in a car, I said. Miles' lip trembled. He wiped his face fast, like he was brushing off rain. I turned to Ms. Moreno. Ms. Moreno, I said, I want you to hear this. Your pain matters. You deserve repairs. You deserve respect. You deserve safety. She nodded, tears still shining. Then I turned back. Miles Renshaw, I said, stand up. He stood, The bailiff watched him closely. I said, I am going to sentence you in stages. That means step by step, because I want you to understand every part. Miles swallowed. ACT 4, sentencing. First, I said, financial penalty. Miles blinked. I don't have. I held up my hand. Listen. I read from the bills and the estimates. Ms. Moreno has a medical bill of $280, I said. She has a wrist brace cost of $46. She has a missed work note for 3 days, and her mirror repair estimate is $490. Miles' eyes widened. I continued. You will pay restitution. Restitution is a big word. It means paying back the money your actions caused. I looked at him. The total restitution is $816. He breathed out like someone punched him. I said, you will pay $100 within 7 days, then $50 every 2 weeks until it is paid. If you miss a payment, you come back in front of me. Miles started to speak. I stopped him with my calm voice. You found money for a plate swap. You offered double to hide a dent. You can find money to fix the harm. The gallery murmured. Second, I said, license suspension. Miles' face went pale. I said, your license is suspended for 6 months. He blurted, I need the car. I said, you will still have access to the vehicle for shelter under one condition. You do not drive it. He stared. I explained. The car can be parked legally. It can be moved only by a licensed driver approved by the court social worker or by a family support plan Ms. Halverson sets up. If you are caught driving, you will be taken into custody. Miles' hands shook. Third, I said, community service. His chin lifted a little, like he thought that was nothing. I said, you will do 120 hours. His eyes widened again. I continued. But it will not be random. It will be tied to what you did. I pointed toward the school zone charge. For 8 Saturdays, I said, you will report at 7 a.m. to the Green Street School Facilities Office. You will help set up crosswalk cones, clean the sidewalk edges, and repaint faded curb markings with the city crew. You will be supervised. You will sign in and sign out. He swallowed. I said, for the rest of your hours, you will work in the school cafeteria where Ms. Moreno works. Not next to her if she does not want that. But in the same building, you will see what it takes to feed kids. You will wear the hairnet. You will scrub trays. You will learn. Miles whispered, they're going to hate me. I said, good. Let that feeling teach you what you tried to put on Ms. Moreno. Ms. Moreno's eyes widened. She looked at me like she wasn't sure what to feel. Fourth, I said, public accountability. Miles frowned. What now? I said, you will write a handwritten apology. He opened his mouth. I said, handwritten means with pen on paper, not typed, not copied, your own words. I turned to Ms. Moreno. You may read it or throw it away. That is your choice. Ms. Moreno nodded slowly. I looked back at Miles. You will also record a 1-minute PSA, I said. Miles blinked. A what? A public service announcement, I said. That means a short message for others. You will stand in front of a camera with the school resource officer present. You will say, in simple words, what happens when you speed in a school zone and leave the scene. He swallowed. I added, you will not make jokes. If you do, we redo it until it is real. The gallery made a soft sound of approval. I said, fifth, special conditions. Miles's shoulders sagged. I said, you will attend an 8-week safe driving class. You will also meet with Ms. Halverson today before you leave. You will bring proof of where you and Nia are sleeping. If you do not, I will order a welfare check. A welfare check means someone checks that a child is okay. Miles whispered, please don't. I said, then cooperate. Then I took a breath. And now, I said, we address your behavior in my courtroom. Miles looked up. I said, you slammed the table, you shouted, you told Ms. Moreno to be quiet, you insulted the court. He started. I said, I know you were scared, but you still crossed the line. I looked at the bailiff. Bailiff, I said, step forward. The bailiff stepped closer. Miles's eyes widened. What are you doing? I said, this is a custody moment, and it is short. The gallery leaned in. I said, Miles Renshaw, you are found in contempt of court. His face went white. I explained in simple words. Contempt means you disrespected the court's order and the people in it. Miles stammered, I'm sorry. I said, you will spend 4 hours in the holding room today. Not days, hours, long enough to cool down and think. Then you will meet with Ms. Halverson. Then you will go home. Miles' eyes got wet. The bailiff placed cuffs on him, careful but firm. The click sounded loud. Miles looked down at his hands like he couldn't believe it. I said, Miles, listen to me. He looked up. This is not me crushing you, I said. This is me stopping you from crushing someone else. He nodded once, small. As the bailiff guided him toward the side door, Miles turned his head back toward Ms. Moreno. His voice cracked. I'm sorry, he said. It was the first time the words sounded real. Ms. Moreno pressed her hand to her chest. She didn't forgive him out loud, but she didn't spit back anger either. She just said, I hope your sister gets a bed. The bailiff led him out. The courtroom exhaled. ACT 5, Aftermath, Transformation. 2 months later, I saw Miles again. He came back for a review hearing. That means a check-in. A review hearing is where I see if you did what you were told. He walked indifferent, no flashy hoodie, no fake watch. He wore plain jeans and a gray sweatshirt. His hair was not styled. His hands still had cuts, but now I knew why. Miss Halverson stood with him. She looked tired but pleased. I asked, Miles Renshaw, how are you doing? He swallowed. Better. I said, that's a short word. Tell me what it means. He nodded. Nia is sleeping inside. The gallery that day was smaller, but you could still feel the relief move like warm air. He continued, we're in a family shelter program. It's not perfect, but it's a room. It has a door that locks. She got her own bed, real sheets. His voice shook, but he held it. I said, good. Ms. Halverson added, he has been showing up to service, on time. Miles said, I did 68 hours so far. The city crew says I work hard. I nodded. And the restitution? He handed the clerk receipts. I looked at them. He had paid $300 already. I glanced at Ms. Moreno. She was there. Her wrist brace was off. Her hand still moved stiff, but she was stronger. She said, he paid, and he wrote the apology. I asked, did you read it? She nodded. Yes. I said, how was it? She took a breath. It wasn't fancy, but it was honest. He wrote that he was scared, and he wrote that he forgot I was a person. He wrote, I made you feel invisible. Miles stared at the floor. I felt the room soften. I asked him, Miles, what did you learn in the cafeteria? He looked up, eyes clearer. He said, that it's hard, that people talk like it's easy, but it's not. Those ladies move fast. They don't get breaks like they should. And kids are hungry, Judge. I nodded. He added, I saw Ms. Moreno carry a milk crate with one hand even when her wrist hurt. I felt ashamed. I said, shame can be poison or medicine. It depends on what you do next. He nodded. Ms. Halverson said, he also did the PSA. Twice. The first one was too jokey. The second one was real. I looked at Miles. Why was the second one real? Miles's voice got quiet. Because I saw Nia crossing the street, he said, and I thought about a car not stopping. That hit me. I turned to Ms. Moreno. Ms. Moreno, I asked, what do you want from this court now? She looked at Miles for a long moment. Then she said, I want him to finish, and I want him to stay in school. Miles looked up fast. I said, Miles, are you back in class? He nodded. Yes, I missed days, but I'm back. I leaned forward. Miles Renshaw, I said, this is what I'm going to do. I spoke slowly so everyone heard. If you complete all service hours, keep paying restitution, and you stay violation-free, I will consider restoring your driving privileges early under strict conditions. His eyes widened. I added, but you will earn it. No shortcuts. No running. He nodded hard. Yes, Judge. I turned to him and said, and one more thing. He froze. I repeated his words back to him. You said I'm just a guy in a robe. He flinched. I said, I'm a man in a robe, yes, but this robe stands for something. It stands for equal rules. It stands for the crossing guard and the kid with no home. It stands for the idea that your pain does not give you permission to hurt others. Miles' eyes filled. He whispered, I understand. I nodded. Before I close this case for today, if you want more stories where a hard lesson becomes a real change, subscribe and stay with me. I'm going to keep telling you what I see from this bench, because people need to remember that justice is also about dignity. Final scene. Plot's moral. After court, the room emptied out. The benches stopped creaking. The voices faded. The only sound was the soft shuffle of papers and the distant echo of footsteps in the hall. I sat alone for a minute. I thought about Ms. Moreno standing in the cold with her stop sign. I thought about kids on a bus watching an adult fail them. I thought about Miles gripping pride like it was a weapon when it was really a shield. I thought about Nia, 8 years old, carrying a backpack bigger than her body, trying to learn math while her brother tried to keep a roof over her head. In my courtroom, I don't get to pick easy cases. I get what the city brings me. And what the city brings me is life, messy and real. But here is what I know. Rules are not here to shame people. They are here to keep the weak safe. And respect is not a luxury. It is not something you buy. It is something you owe. When Miles said he would choose his sister's bed over Miss Moreno's wrist, he thought he was proving love. But love that crushes strangers is not love. It is fear wearing love's clothes. Justice to me is when we stop the harm, we pay back what we can, and we point a person toward a better road. That day, I did not let wealth, attitude, or sadness bend the facts. I also did not let facts erase a child. Because in Providence Municipal Court, every person who stands in front of me is someone's son, someone's neighbor, someone's future. And the last thing I wrote in my notes was simple. You can be broke, you can be scared, you can be alone, but you cannot be cruel. That is the line.